Good morning, everyone. It's May 21st. I came out last night and checked this bean field behind me and made a little report on that. And today, we're going to plant the garden. I should maybe mention, I haven't brought this up, I guess, but we always put in a fairly substantial garden every year. Normally, my wife and I have one in town, and we have one at the farm. This year, we're skipping the one in town because it hasn't ever really produced very well, and I need to do some remedial efforts on that before we can maybe start using it again. So we're going to kind of combine our efforts here. Also, it's hard to get everything weeded all the time when every family's doing their own thing. So we decided to just kind of enlarge or expand the garden at the farm here and try to combine efforts so that Dad and Dana and I and Mom, to some extent, are all helping keep things weeded and cared for and just do a little teamwork. So that's what we're going to put in today, is try to get this thing planted as much as possible. I don't have all the seeds I need, and I don't have all the started plants I need, but I have quite a few, so it's time to get them in the ground. And here we've got a bunch of my started stuff. Dan and I always set up grow lights in our house and start plants, so we've got some cucumber plants and various brassicas over here. Some celery that we started a little late that isn't growing. Some of these I'm going to take back home and keep them under the grow lights a little longer. Tomatoes on the left there. Some peppers that I tried to save seed from last year and they just didn't germinate well. So we'll probably get some started pepper plants for our peppers this year. Cabbages, more tomatoes, Brussels sprouts, some other broccoli varieties, lots of onions, 2 different kinds of hybrid onions that we're going to try. I've had a really hard time growing onions for storage, which is something I'd like to be able to have them grown and be able to keep them over winter. I think we were picking the wrong kinds of varieties and didn't plant the right day-length onions for our area, and maybe didn't water them frequently enough. So some improvements to be made. And then we've got a box of other seeds. Now, along with combining efforts to do some weeding, I also want to do a lot more mulching this year. I'd really like to cut a bunch of meadow grass or even some pasture grass and make sure that everything in between the rows is mulched. That's always been a goal that I've had in past years that just never seems to get done. There's never enough time. There's always other things going on. But since my work schedule's been kind of sidelined with COVID, and I've been out here a lot more already anyway, I'm thinking maybe this year we'll actually make it. And between that and also having finished the soil food web courses, I'm planning to do a lot of compost making later this summer. I'm still waiting on compost thermometer and some other supplies that I need to really get started on that. But once I start making compost and being able to make compost teas and extracts, I want to basically begin using that on the gardens and our own food production first. Test it there before I start trying to employ it on a larger scale in our fields. So I'm hoping that between mulching everything, all of us working together, maybe getting some compost teas and extracts to help speed things along and get the right biology in the soil, that as the summer goes on, we can really kind of do some intensive gardening stuff and kind of just use it as a test bed and see how that all works out. I'm hoping it'll be a good success, but you know, you can hope a lot and still have things go badly. So, all right, I've got all the transplants in the garden here and got a fence up around them. Quite a few rows of, first 2 rows are tomatoes over on that side, and then we've got broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, kohlrabi in the back. And then I put up a simple fence. It's just chicken wire and step-in posts. And that's mainly to keep Duke out of there. Those plants are so small. Normally my transplants are bigger, but I got a late start on them. And I don't want him to go in there and tromp them down. One bad paw step by the Dukester, and that would spell death for some of these little seedlings. So that's done. And then over on this side, I got kind of a dividing line that I made with the hoe here. I'm going to make a little walking path through there. And over here are going to be all the rows for all the vegetables. And then down on the very end down there, that's the north end, I'm going to put some pole beans and a cucumber patch. Now we're going to take a little break from the garden work here because Dad has started to spray the cover crop in the big 18-acre field. So we may as well go have a look at that. Here's the big field today. A little bit of standing water in there yet. That 4-inch rain that we got was 5 days ago. You can really see the fertilizer lines on the headlands here. That's a bright green stripe for you. This isn't too bad a day for spraying. It's warm. I wish it was a little sunnier. The plants were a little bit more active in their photosynthesis, but we'll take what we can get. I think it's going to get the job done just fine. Now I can tell he's going to be watching pretty close here what he's doing, because we don't have guidance of any kind. It's just steer wherever you see is the best. Wing it. But he's got those dark lines to follow. And he said that he can even see the corn as it's coming up. So that's our sprayer setup. It's just a 300-gallon Clark, old school, pretty simple. But for the amount of land that we're running and what we need to do here, it gets the job done for us. About the only thing that I would improve on it or change would be to put that foam marker system on. The more I watch and see how tough it is when we're trying to spray cover crops down and there aren't obvious rows to follow, the more I think that would be a good investment and not a bad way to spend $500-600. Maybe after we sell some corn this winter. Then I could rig it up next spring and have it ready to go. Oh, he stopped down there. What's he doing? I think he was just counting his rows off, because now he's going again. I don't know. He's up to something. Now, it's only been a few days since that rain, but we can see our corn sprouts are really coming up nicely now. Clearly the rain is what they needed to get them going. I know it's a little hard to pick them out here with cereal rye growing all around them. They don't look all that different on camera. But there we go. We got corn seedlings. We upped our plant population this year. I think Dad thought we were planting at 28,000 plants in the past. It was actually more like 24,500. And I think this year we bumped it up to over 29,000 just to see what would happen. So that's another difference, another change we made. Won't know how that works out till this fall. Don't quote me on those corn population numbers. I think I got it pretty close to correct, if not correct. Point being, we upped the population count in an effort to see if our yield would go up a little bit. I should also note what he's spraying out there. It's a combination of glyphosate to terminate the cereal rye, and since we waited, maybe one of the advantages of waiting is that we got a good flush of ragweed going out there. So now that because the corn seedlings are small, they'll tolerate 2,4-D. So he is spraying a mix of 2,4-D amine on there as well. That should knock out those early ragweed plants, and hopefully we don't get another flush of them. In a perfect world, that would be ideal. One spray pass, post-emerge, done. No pre-emerge on the field. Well, you know, it's an experiment, right? Everything's an experiment around here. Hey, so I'm on my way out to the farm, and I wanted to make a quick pit stop. Yesterday, Dad sprayed down the cover crops in the big 18-acre field. And this field he did 2 days ago, and now a cool transformation starts to happen. So this is our local county road. People drive by all the time. Hello, citizen. And all they have to do is turn and look, and that's the field they're looking at. So to folks who don't know what cereal rye looks like, this field just looks like a big bunch of weeds or something random. And even though the corn is sprouted in there, you can't really see it because it's hidden by all that cereal rye. And now, as this dies off after being sprayed, all of a sudden the corn is going to emerge. He sprayed these headlands last week. He hit these a little bit earlier, but then decided to wait. I don't remember why, if there was rain coming in or what, but anyway. So you can start to see it in stages now where the headlands have been sprayed off. They're getting crispy, but if you look down, you can see the corn rows coming through. So anyway, the point I'm getting at is that last year we got some calls where people were like, what are you doing with those fields? It looks like you don't have anything planted at all. And the cover crop was spotty and inconsistent. It looked weedy. And then all of a sudden the cover crop died off and they thought there was just nothing planted in here, and then like magic there was corn. So I'm kind of looking forward to, we might get some calls from passers-by or people pulling into the farmyard and being like, what in the world are you guys doing with your fields? And for folks who are driving by every day, it must look sort of magical to have a field that looks like it's got nothing in it. And if they didn't happen to drive by when we were planting or doing any work in the field, it would seem like it had just been left to go fallow. And then, boom, all of a sudden there's a growing corn crop in there. And if we're lucky, maybe it'll look like a pretty good corn crop. So anyway, I just think that's neat. It's one of the things about the regenerative agriculture process that I really like, is that for folks who aren't acquainted with it, it seems like something's gone horribly wrong, and then all of a sudden, it looks like things are going right. So that's just kind of fun, and I wanted to stop and make a note of it. So as fun and magical as cover crops are, I've got a new project for today, which is Goose Exclusion. Yeah, you heard that right, Goose Exclusion. It's fun to say. Try it. Goose Exclusion. Goose Exclusion. Goose. Starts to lose its meaning after a while. General maintenance?
Yes. Are you going to put up the fencing?
Yes, I am.
So that means you're tired of getting goosed.
I'm tired of getting goosed. I think maybe it'd be best to just show you what I'm talking about, so you can, I can quit rambling here. See these guys? Geese, Canada geese. And what they're in is one of our soybean fields. And I'm a long ways away. If I get much closer, they'll retreat to the water. But they do a pretty destructive number on our crops every year. That whole shoreline there of our pond and that field border, they'll carve a swath all the way up that hillside once they're little ones, once those goslings start to get a little bigger. So I am going to put up a fence to keep them out. Now I remember when I was a kid, we never had Canada geese on the pond. And then in the early to mid 90s, all of a sudden we had a mating pair and we were all excited about it. We named them Goosey and Gussie, and they had a flock, clutch, whatever, I don't know what a group of goslings is called off the top of my head. They had a bunch of goslings, and we were in love with them. We thought it was the coolest thing that we had geese on the pond after years of never having them. And fast forward to 2019, I suppose. Last year they destroyed at least 2 acres of cropland. Between the field I just pointed to you and the 18-acre field, which is over there, they came in and just mauled the crops. So this year we were talking about everything from getting a permit from the DNR and shooting them to building some kind of an exclusion. And call me soft-hearted or an environmentalist or whatever, I don't like the idea of eradicating them, even though they're a problem for us. And for any other farmer, 2 acres might not be a big deal. For us, when we only plant 20 acres of a certain crop, having 2 acres of it wiped out is kind of a big deal. But I just didn't feel right about going in there and shooting them. So in trying to think of a way to control them, we were thinking about building different kinds of fences. Dana and I would like to fence the whole farm in with a perimeter fence eventually for rotating cattle and grazing. So we thought maybe we just invest the money now and build high tensile fences in those areas and get that part out of the way, and that can act as a goose deterrent. But you know, it's money invested, and there's not a lot of money to go around right now for farm projects. So then the other night it finally occurred to me, my buddy Matt has a small vineyard, and he has bird nets for his vineyard. And he's not using them between now and middle of August. That's when he would normally put those nets up. So I called him up. He only lives about a mile away, and I said, hey, could I borrow some bird netting to try to put up a goose fence? And he was all for it. He thought it was a great idea. So now I've got 3 rolls of bird netting that should be able to cover a long span, and the geese will be able to fly over it, but when they have their little goslings, they don't like to fly over stuff because the goslings can't fly yet. And the beans are just sprouting now. The cotyledons are just coming up out of the ground. So now's the time to throw up a section of this fence and see if it works, because if it will keep them at bay and keep them away from the crop until the crop can get tall enough that they can't nibble off the tops of the beans or the corn plants, beans in this case, then it'll be a success. And we won't have to kill anything. They can happily coexist with us on the pond and just stay out of our fields. So that's our mission for today. And in case I didn't make that clear, there are a lot more geese now than there were with that first pair. We counted over 20 on the pond the other day, and they seem to come and go. I'm not sure how many of them are permanent residents and how many are just kind of floating between bodies of water in our neighborhood. I know that there are at least 3 pairs out there now that have goslings. The number of goslings is probably over 20 at this point, just them alone. So that could be up to 40 geese once they get to be juveniles. Hence, they can eat a lot of crop. The goose says, apparently we're not speaking the same language. All right, I'm gonna start here, place a T-post somewhere in here. This area gets pretty tall. This grass is gonna grow really rapidly at this point, and geese do not like to walk through tall grass, especially with goslings. To them, it's a predator threat zone. So over there where the water is up into the field, that's our main target. So I think that if I run the mesh along here all the way down to that point, and then it would start to get back into the grassy areas again. So if I can just get past that, I think we'll be in much better shape than we're in currently. Here's my roll of vineyard netting to be repurposed. Post pounder, T-post to start. Tractor's over there. I didn't want to bring it out into the field and be running down beans, so I'll hoof it. Alright, so I've got a start on it here. Stuff is really fine. I don't know if you're going to be able to see it too well on the camera. But I've been knocking these posts in. Oh, I just took a guess and kind of went 20 paces. And actually at first I thought that would be too far because it kind of sags. But then it's like made of a fiberglass mesh, so it's or something similar. So you can grab it and stretch it. So once I have it up on the posts, then I've been going along and just tightening it up at the top and adding a couple extra ties, kind of bunching it up, and that stretches it nice and tight at the top. And as it turns out, the roll ran out right over at the road there, so it got me exactly as far as I need to go. I'm a little concerned that the geese are going to just walk around the end of it, but I'm going to wait and watch, and I can always tack on a little more to the end. It's not too hard to add on and go a little further. So I got to about here, had to go cut some more ties, and I'll be wrapping this up pretty quick. It really isn't that tough to do. Maybe a little fine tuning, and that should be it. Oh, good luck, guys, because I'm done. And my timing couldn't be better. Baby beans coming up through the soil. Just when the geese would like to be getting in here and chowing down, I've got my fence all put up and ready. So this should keep them out, I'm hoping. Now, of course, it's just going to be a matter of watch and see. And find out if they find a way to get around or through or under or over and adjust accordingly. The way I kind of look at it is even if they go around the end and they get into the main field, then the fence keeps them from getting back to the water. And for them right now with their little goslings, the water is their safe space. So then they'd be trapped in the field if an angry farmer came along. So then it would be a choice between, you know, run some strange direction that they're not familiar with, or fight. Not that I'm all that keen on tangling with a goose. I've seen geese fight human beings, and usually the human beings don't come out very well. But those are also city geese that are used to brawling and street fighting and dealing with people on a daily basis. So I'm thinking maybe my sort of gentrified country geese will be less likely to want to have open combat. At any rate, that took me about 2 hours, which was faster than I thought it would go. And now I have a section over there to do to block them out of our cornfield. One of the other reasons that I'm thinking this will work is that everything on that side of the pond, which is a fairly large cornfield that was planted ahead of ours, and I think is a little bit ahead of ours in its growth, that's all still going to be open. So if the geese can't easily get into our 2 fields, the most likely and easiest scenario for them will be to just go and raid that other field. Now that's run by a neighbor of ours, and I don't wish any ill will on him, but it's on him to put up his own fence, so. Look at this bunch of rabble-rousers. They're already wondering what I'm up to. No beans for you. You go on, geese, you get. Don't care, not even a little bit. It's hard to tell, but they're actually only like... they're less than 50 yards away from me. Alright, I got one section done, now to do the next section, which is going to start from the corner right here. Probably going to actually back that fence up to about that tree, or close. Turn the corner, come past where the M is sitting, and then run it all the way down that line. And then this is our 18-acre field with corn in it. This is the one that Dad sprayed down yesterday. I have to say, this cereal rye cover crop got very advanced. There's cover crop people who would tell you not to let the corn and the cereal rye grow next to each other for this long because the rye will rob nutrients from the corn. You can see the dark rows real clearly where this rye has taken up the fertilizer that we put down. I mean, probably not anymore because it should be effectively dead now. That glyphosate should have pretty much stopped it at this point, but it'll take a little while for it to dry out and really present itself as dead. Anyway, this will be interesting to see because a lot of the studies that I've read, which admittedly is only a few, but they claim that, you know, if you waited this sort of a long amount of time to terminate the cover, you'd see an 8 to 10 bushel yield drop in the corn. As I've maybe said before in other videos, I'm not that concerned with getting maximum corn yield. I have an alternate market. I'm going to sell this for wildlife feed as much as I can and direct market it. So if I get less than an optimal, 200 bushel an acre yield, it's fine. It's not a big deal. The nice thing about that is I get to experiment and provide results to all of you, hopefully, in some manner by this fall. So it's just kind of interesting. We'll see how this goes. I'd like to see it die off. They say the benefits of the extra residue and stuff do not outweigh the cost to your yield. But for me, maybe those benefits do outweigh the cost to my yield. I think that it's unique to every farmer. We'll be side dressing this in 2 to 3 weeks, and that's a surprise for you guys how we're going to do that. But I'm kind of hoping the majority of our fertilizer is going on in that side dress application. By then the rye is going to be completely dead and smoked off, so hopefully that'll give the corn enough of what it needs to get it through the majority of its growing season, and possibly towards the tail end of the growing season, it may be starting to get some nutrients back as this rye decomposes. But with the amount of residue I have on the fields, there's still residue here from 2 years ago, and I think that's because our soil biology isn't quite up to full steam. In fact, I think it's not even close to up to full steam. So if we had better soil biology and it was breaking down the residue faster, I'd be sure that there'd be some of the nutrient tied up in this rye coming back to the corn by the end of the year. I'm not confident in that at this point. But it's the right idea. All right, we're done. That's a total of about 1,200 feet of goose fencing put up today. Everything behind me here is fenced out. It's really hard to see. I don't even know how I can point the camera at it because I'm standing here looking at it and I can't see it. That netting is so fine. But you'll just have to trust me, it's done. So, there we go. Goose exclusion. The exclusion zone. It's like Chernobyl, only with more geese and less radiation.